Hey, and welcome back. So today we're going to talk about the ethical mandate and the way forward. This is going to be a pretty quick video that's going to give us the framework of how we're going to start to look at and address a lot of these contemporary social issues in regards to what now. So oftentimes I get a lot of questions. All right, so now we've identified some of these social problems. What do you want me to do? What am I supposed to do now? So the ethical mandate is a way forward. This way forward is a difficult journey, but the moral and ethical mandate for social justice requires action, not passivity and inaction. Continue to work on anti-racism has shown the importance of establishing the following conditions to combat racial bias and prejudice. Now, the ethical mandate that we're talking about here is highly focused on racial inequality, but you can apply it to any social issue, ableism, autism, sexism, things of that nature. So, anywho, continue to work on anti-racism shows the importance of establishing the following conditions to combat racial bias and prejudice. Additionally, each is necessary, but not a sufficient condition to combat racism alone, right? So in other words, change is most likely to be positive when all 7 conditions exist simultaneously, or in a linear construction. Each would require considerable elaboration, but are briefly listed here. If you are interested in a more thorough description, you can find it in an article by D.W. Sue from 2003. So the first step is to have intimate contact with people who differ from us in whatever, right? So this says race, culture, ethnicity. It can also be, if we're looking at sexism, people who differ from us in gender, gender orientation, gender performance, sexual identity, sexual preference. Does that make sense? So then the next one is working together in a cooperation rather than a competitive environment. So we understand, going back to that conversation we had, that it is not about competing or convincing someone of your particular ideology, but it is about witnessing someone else's reality and allowing that reality to exist simultaneously with yours, and then to start to understand and start to make space for all of these different realities to exist simultaneously, and making a social system that supports all of those different realities. And then it's also important for us to work together as a team rather than to be competitive about it. So when we see that a lot of movement happens when we acknowledge and honor the efforts of other communities. Going back to step 1, when we have intimate contact with people who differ from us, it helps to change our perspectives of how people are. So we make a lot of assumptions of communities and humans, but when we start to have intimate, reciprocal, authentic relationships with others, a lot of times those particular questions or biases that we have starts to get dismantled because we have personal experiences with people who counter our ideas. Okay, so continuing this conversation, we see that sharing mutual goals as opposed to individual ones. So it's really important for us to organize and to communicate with each other, utilizing the languages that we've built and the communication that we've built to understand as a collective unit, as a society, as invested members, what is important for us to do. What are our collective goals rather than just my individual ones? How as we as a society can move towards a more equitable, a more kind, a more supportive existence for everyone. Exchanging and learning accurate information rather than stereotypes and misinformation. This is a difficult one, and let me tell you why. Media, right? Unfortunately, with media and the distrust from individuals in regards to social sciences and statistics, oftentimes we have skewed information in regards to these ideas, right? Especially if you expose yourself only to individuals who believe and speak and think exactly the same way that you do, right? So when we think of these stereotypes and misinformation that gets perpetuated, it is because we don't expose ourselves or have intimate contact with people from different ideas, right? So when we think of learning stereotypes, oftentimes what happens is that we have grown into a bit of a lazy society in the way that we find information that supports what we believe, right? So as a social scientist, it is my job, and now as a social scientist as you are, it is our jobs to seek out as much information as we can find in regards to our particular issue, and then when we conduct research, figure out in a way that honors the community that we're looking at, what's happening, and how we can get accurate information, right? So part of that is learning. It is your job to educate yourself and those around you and exchange those ideas. Again, move out of your comfort zone, right? So separate yourself or move away from people who think and speak and talk and act and believe exactly the same way that you do, right? To start thinking of exchanging ideas that are outside of your prescribed norm. So sharing an equal status relationship with other groups instead of an unequal or imbalanced one. This is also tricky because oftentimes we get into this idea that like, hey, it's balanced, I know, right? But maybe you potentially are the privileged body in this scenario, so it's really important to utilize those communication styles and utilize mindfulness and witnessing to start to question the people in these relationships or in these groups. Is this equal? Is this experience with you and I in whatever setting equitable or balanced? And how then can we move forward towards a more equitable one? Oftentimes we just assume that it is, when in reality it's not always that way. Okay, so having leadership and authority is supportive of group harmony and welfare. This is a really big one, especially now when we have such political unrest and social unrest. We need to start looking at leaders who can have authority as supportive rather than derogatory, attacking authority, or authority that continues to perpetuate stereotypes and hate, right? We need to start electing leaders. We need to have more involvement with our political process, starting from people that we vote in power in our own towns to the president. We need to start thinking about who can support group harmony and welfare and who can help to continue to strive towards a more equitable existence and support the Human Rights Declaration that we agreed to in the first place. The next is feeling a sense of unity or spiritual interconnectedness with all humanity. Now this is a linear construction, right? So it is easiest, or it is most smooth in the transition to go from step 1 to step 2 to step 3 to step 4, because it builds a foundation and framework for you then to start feeling this sense of unity or interconnectedness with all humanity, right? You can start with that if you would like, whatever feels best for you in your journey, but oftentimes we think that like, all right, well, I'm on the top of the food chain, or I have a more intellectual construction. But if you back out of that and start thinking, we're all human, right? We are all connected. We are all made up of the same stuff. We all have the basic survival needs, right? We all want safety. We all want to feel belonging and loved. We all want to be able to have access to resources and feed our family and take care of our loved ones. Those are universal. And so we need to start looking at how this interconnectedness of all humanity, we're all striving for the same thing, right? How can we support each other to get to that idea of successful, safe, secure, belonging, love, resources, taking care of our family and friends? Some of that might be that we have to reconstruct how we come to know our everyday realities to allow someone else to exist, simply exist, right? So Gandhi says, live simply so that others may simply exist. It's in the same construction, right? We may have to start to reorganize how we understand our everyday reality just to allow other people to live, to be. Does that make sense? All right, so that's it for this recording in regards to the ethical mandate and how we can start to move forward. Take a minute to think about how you in your own life can start to utilize these steps to move forward, to start to take change in your own everyday reality. Cool? All right. See you next time. Check in on your discussion boards. Make sure that you're keeping up on your emails and your discussion boards and everything like that. All right, for real this time. See you next time.